the 4 neurochemical phases of love that we're going to cover today is going to be 1, lust. We're going to talk about the social function of testosterone and estrogen in terms of how it affects love. Then we're going to talk about obsession, which is the part of, if you lust is a single moment in time of you making really bad decisions. And then obsession is you just getting stuck and being addicted to a person. Right?
Okay.
Right? Then the third phase is attachment, which is when you sort of shift over to kind of the fuzzy, long-term love. And then hopefully, if you're in a good relationship, you never reach the fourth phase. But the fourth phase is breakup or withdrawal. And breakups, if you look at a brain when somebody is going through a very difficult breakup, it's very hard to tell that brain again from something that is going through withdrawal of addiction to something like cocaine.
Wow. So it's literally withdrawal from all the neurochemicals.
It's the same chemicals.
Really?
It's the same chemicals.
Oh my God.
And so that's kind of the wild thing. So those are the 4 things: lust, obsession, attachment, and then breakup, the withdrawal of love.
I was just thinking the lust and obsession sounds like perfume brands. But then I was like, okay, maybe not attachment and breakup. It probably wouldn't work as a good marketing for a perfume brand. But the first 2.
Manipulation Games cologne.
Attachment.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to get into is lust.
Okay.
And so I think an interesting way to kind of talk about lust is I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. And the story is the anatomy of a one-night stand.
Okay.
Right. The initial meeting. They lock eyes across the bar, and bam, the brain's off to the races. First up, testosterone and estrogen. Testosterone in both the man and the woman kicks in with a surge of arousal. The man feels bold, and the woman feels flirty. If the woman's estrogen is peaking mid-cycle, her skin exhibits a glow, and the pitch of her voice is a little higher than usual. Subtle signals screaming, "I'm fertile right now." Testosterone makes us blind to risk, so the man crosses the room to say hello. In the woman, the increase in estrogen boosts her sensitivity to social cues, like reading emotions. This sharpens her emotional radar to help her assess the approaching man. Is he a legitimate suitor, or is he just a silly player? As he walks up, they both get hit with norepinephrine, adrenaline. This boosts alertness, spikes their heart rates, and slows down time. The flirting and escalation begins. He says hello. Now they're chatting, flirting, maybe dancing. Dopamine goes into overdrive. Dopamine is the chemical of more. Dopamine is the chemical of the brain likes this, keep going. This makes them the center of attention for the other. Right now, at this moment in time, an fMRI wouldn't be able to tell the difference of whether they're on cocaine or not because of how similar the effect is.
Wow.
Norepinephrine, the adrenaline, keeps them hyper alert, catching every smile and every touch. Serotonin starts to take a dip, which dials up their obsessiveness. They find themselves overanalyzing every laugh, every touch, every flirty joke. Do they really like me? They ask themselves. At this point in time, the prefrontal cortex is basically given up. That's the rational part of the brain, and it's just letting all these chemicals run the show. So the physical intimacy begins. They jump in an Uber to a hotel, kissing and holding hands during the ride. Enter oxytocin. Even in a one-night stand, a light touch, a little hand-holding, a graze against the skin triggers oxytocin release from the pituitary gland, creating a small flicker of trust with a complete stranger. As they arrive in the dim room, passionately making out, dopamine is still spiking, screaming, "Keep going, more, more, more." Norepinephrine, too, keeps them highly alert and fully locked into the other person. Time slows, and any thought of the outside world melts away. Enter the endorphins. The the body's natural painkillers. It creates a warm, euphoric rush through the entire body. The clothes are now on the floor. This is the moment where testosterone peaks, driving sexual urgency. Men's levels of testosterone can double during foreplay. Testosterone drives both brains over the line to begin the sexual act. Estrogen in the woman enhances sensitivity to touch, making every sensation electric. Both emotional centers, the amygdalas, are lit up like Christmas trees, processing this emotional high, and their rational judgment is nowhere to be seen. The sexual intercourse begins. This is where dopamine hits its peak. It's driving more, and it's driving them towards the orgasm. Oxytocin surges during the climax, especially in women. This is why even with a no strings attached fling, there's still a residual feeling of connection oftentimes afterwards. And then, of course, as the man reaches his orgasm, he gets hit with a wave of prolactin, which brings this calm, satisfied haze, basically the we're done signal, as he rolls over and passes out.
That's very interesting.
So this is the symphony of neurochemicals that have to happen to create one night stand.
Interesting. So it is literally the chemicals in your brain that are rushing, that feelings and emotions that are flooding into all of the connections that make us kind of perform these actions, I guess.
Yeah.
In order to sleep with somebody, it's a symphony. Like
it's a symphony, and if you really think about it, the whole aspect of lust is your brain trying to make you make a very bad decision. Right?
Why is it such a bad decision, then?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad decision, but it's basically trying to hijack your brain to make you take a risk that you weren't planning on taking anyway. Because again, if you think about it from the standpoint of having sex with a complete stranger, right? A fling, that's risky.
It is,
especially for the woman, right? Because
Yeah.
if a woman gets pregnant, that's
true,
the thing.
100%.
But in general, it's a risk-taking thing.
Yeah.
But it's the brain basically has that built in from evolution that it's at certain moments of time it can completely just take over.
That makes so much sense because again, it's like we don't want to just have babies just randomly, but that's just pure logic. But through evolution, through all of these chemicals, we have to trick our brains into doing something that has lifetime repercussions. That if we actually stopped and thought about it, it's like, wait, we might have a kid now. Like we probably wouldn't have sex without these chemicals.
This is how people get into trouble, right?
That makes sense.
So, in the lust phase of kind of the neurochemicals of love, a couple of things to like really pay attention to. The big drivers is testosterone and estrogen. Now, testosterone is really important. We know about it as something that obviously is involved in the development of people, right? Gives men muscles and that kind of stuff, right? But testosterone also has a very powerful social function, both in men and women, because they both need to experience testosterone to get aroused. And the social function of what testosterone does for us in our behavior, it makes us blind to risk.
Okay, that does make sense.
The more testosterone you have, the more blind you are to risk.
Yeah, because again, like young adults, like men in their 20s,
Exactly.
they peak at risk taking.
Yes, yeah, they do very dumb things between 15 and 28 years old.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so, one of the interesting things about how testosterone works, just even in the animal kingdom, is you would have like a bird, like a house sparrow, right, and they have these spots on their neck, and depending on how much testosterone they have, their spot either grows or it shrinks, right? But the more testosterone you have, the bigger the dot, and the more of a status signal it is, right? But it also puts a target on your back to get your ass kicked by other birds. So if you can't handle it, right, testosterone naturally starts down-regulating. Right, to kind of find your safe spot in your society.
Interesting.
You're not boasting too much, but you're still able to show kind of status signals, right? So in this way, testosterone is something that makes us blind to risk, but also kind of manages our position in different situations.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I never knew that testosterone kind of self-regulated itself.
It self-regulates to such a degree that a lot of it is even tied to identity, where you could be watching a team playing the World Cup, and if you're a huge fan of that team and that team loses, your testosterone will go down.
Man, like that makes me think again, like people who want to increase their testosterone, there's a lot of men out there who do want to do that. So what you're saying is like it's a lot of it is just in circumstance and in your head and how you feel.
It's a lot about kind of how you are perceived and how you think you're perceived in.
Man, so it's a mental. It's a lot. It's a lot of it is just mental. Then
it is definitely mental.
Okay.
It's also, even think about like how it could get in trouble. Imagine like you were some crazy winner, like you're a boxer and you keep winning, right? And so the more testosterone ramps up, the more you start taking riskier moves. A lot of this happens to like high end athletes, right? Until eventually you can't pull off what you're trying to think, right? But it could literally make you go crazy because you become blind to risk.
Oh, that makes so much sense again because you see a lot of athletes making really dumb decisions.
Yes.
Whether it's like business or relationships or having a ton of kids for no reason. They probably have a lot of testosterone. So you probably, they make a lot of mistakes. But
the more you win, the more your testosterone goes up.
Yeah, but that makes so much sense.
Think about like Michael Jordan and his gambling issues, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. He kept getting into trouble. And so there's this aspect of, testosterone. Its role in lust is making us blind to risk. One of the interesting things that came up when I was once sitting in a university and there's like a random scientific journal and I picked it up and it had like a thing about what professions have the highest testosterone. It had a pretty small sample of different professions, but the top profession was very surprising. Do you want to guess it?
The top profession with the highest testosterone?
Yeah, on average.
Oh, well, I'm going to say maybe someone who wins a lot.
But potentially, that definitely helps.
It's not an athlete? It's not?
Athletes would definitely be on the list.
But it's not. What's the highest?
Yeah. My guess initially would be obviously be like firefighters, right? I think firefighters are badass, right?
Right.
It's actors.
Oh, really?
It's particularly stage actors and comedians.
Oh, why is that?
Because it seems like it's not only the winning part, but there's also a performative aspect to testosterone. It's a display of things, and it makes you take risks. Like, for example, go out on a stage, right? Or like you said, athletes like football players was second among the groups that they were looking at. It makes you go out and be able to take on incredible risks. The pressure on the shoulders of like a football player playing in the Super Bowl. That's insane, right? So they're probably running on a very, very high testosterone.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Athletes, you win games and you lose games. Yeah. So maybe when you lose, your testosterone goes down a little bit.
Yeah, but you're still playing in the NFL. You're still going to be pretty high. I mean, maybe like it regulates, it goes up and down, it fluctuates, but it's still this thing that kind of causes risk. So the biggest thing in terms of how testosterone affects lust, right, is it makes you blind to risk. Therefore, you are willing to go across the room and try to take your shot with that.
Does that apply for both men and women?
Yes.
Really, even women have high testosterone if they're actors.
Well, I don't know about actresses, but women have high testosterone as part of the process. And I would imagine women actresses probably would also have this function as part of it. Because both men and women have testosterone and estrogen. They just have slightly different ratios. This is like why a lot of times bodybuilders get into trouble, right? Because they start juicing with testosterone, right? And then it gets, to compensate, the estrogen shoots up. And it's like in Fight Club, Bob had bitch tits. You remember that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like one of the weird things that happens is that your body's trying to keep a balance between all the hormones. So if somebody's just nuking themselves with testosterone, it can go haywire.
Wow.
Right? And now, on the women's side, right, estrogen has an interesting function,